Hey guys, welcome to another great opportunity to hear from an expert in HR leadership and just in this field in general. We are so excited to have Dawn Beck with us today. Dawn is a trusted advisor with 30 years of progressive experience in developing strategic plans, high-performing teams, programs, and policies. She's an expert facilitator, which you guys will find out in this presentation, and engaging trainer with real-life experience in improving recruitment and retention efforts by working with managers to become the leaders that everyone wants to work with. When Dawn was 6 years old, her father was arrested and incarcerated in a state prison. Having an incarcerated parent had an indelible impact on her life, initially characterized by shame, others' judgments, and fear of revealed family secrets. Can't even imagine. Dawn has since changed that narrative of her story to one of resilience, advocacy, and empowering others to leverage their unique experiences and talents for an enhanced collective impact. Dawn founded New Dawn Consulting in 2021 with the aim to support and guide individuals, teams, and organizations in creating cultures where authenticity, inclusiveness, individuality, and talent optimization, are the norm. Driven by the organization's motto of one goal, one passion, shine, Dawn leverages her personal and professional and lived experiences to foster excellence. She is known for her expertise in guiding transformation via strengths-based leadership, employee engagement, and courageous problem solving. Now, for those of you who don't know, one of the things I love about Dawn's story is her history. And for those of you who know, I have been a foster parent for 8 years. And so this connects and resonates really, really well with me, because I have these amazing children that I am working with that have had some really crazy, and some would say terrible, life experiences, but are some of the most amazing human beings and have gifts that I can't even imagine. So I'm so excited today to present Dawn and to have you here with your expertise and experience and just where your heart is, honestly, around this as well. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor. I'm excited to hear all the other presenters and to be part of this. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, thank you. All right, Dawn, we're going to jump right into it. Can you introduce us? I know, right? There's a lot. Can you introduce us to this concept of we all come from something, and how understanding this philosophy can create stronger team bonds in small businesses and corporate settings?
Yeah, thanks. There's a lot to unpack with that. When I say we all come from something. So I do have a visual. I'm going to share my screen here. So pardon me, I'm not the best with technology, but I'll do my best here. All right. Give me a thumbs up when you can see that.
I can see it for sure. Thumbs up.
All right. So this is a slide that I adapted. Now, earlier you mentioned that I use a methodology called talent optimization. And this I adapted from that. The talent optimization company that I work with is called Predictive Index. I'm a partner with them. But they say what we bring to work every day is our heads, our hearts, and our briefcases, and that the whole person shows up at work. Based on what I know from my background, I was a public health professional for 20 years. And so have a lot of experience with looking at social determinants of health and what are the root causes of things that create inequities and things of that nature. So this whole idea of our experiences shaping who we are is something that's near and dear to my heart, not only because of my public health background, but because of my experience as the child of an incarcerated parent, which, as you may not know, I'm in the state of Minnesota. In Minnesota, that's the second most common adverse childhood experience that Minnesota students report. Wow. It's probably very top of the list, no matter where you are in this country. People don't know a lot about it because we don't talk about it, but it is what's considered an adverse childhood experience, and it's something that ultimately can change the way your brain is wired and can impact your health, how long you live, and how healthy you are when you live. So it's a pretty big deal, right?
Absolutely.
But just know that our experiences, the stress and the trauma that we have in our lives, and all of the good things that happen in our lives, they help shape us too. And so that's where that concept of we all come from something. And so I listed out just some examples. The list could go on, but childhood trauma is very common. Social injustices, racism, or any ism that you've been exposed to as a person who felt like you were on the outside looking in. Mental illness, substance abuse, workplace bullying, post-traumatic stress. And you all could add probably 10 more things to that list, but those experiences shape who we are. So we all come from something, and that comes to work with us too. So not only our heads and how we think, what motivates our behavior, and our hearts, what we value and what we're interested in, and our briefcases, our work experience, our knowledge, and our skills, but our experiences come with us too. That whole person shows up at work. And so we have to pay attention to all of that. And I think that the organizations that pay attention to that and do things to support folks wherever they are in their life's journey and giving grace to understand that we all come from something are going to be the ones that are the employer of choice.
I agree. In fact, there's been a huge topic of conversation around this next generation that is expecting this different type of leadership. And this is one of those, I think, definitely massive impacts that an employer or business can make. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I'll quit sharing my screen.
Okay.
Now.
You got it. That's amazing. And just for you guys, if you didn't know, there is the PowerPoint in there. We'll have probably one more slide, but we wanted you guys to have access to that as well. So you can pull it up, and Dawn's done a phenomenal job of that. Dawn, how have you seen businesses practically implement the appreciation of diverse lived experiences to foster a more cohesive team environment, right? Because everybody wants to know, well, that's great. How do you apply it? How does it work in real life?
Well, it starts at the individual level, right? It starts at the individual level and understanding yourself, and then moving that to the team level and understanding those on your team and those that you work with, or the people that you live with in your house, really. I mean, we all have different ways of making decisions. We all have different ways of processing ideas, and we all have different ways of how we resolve conflict. And so looking at that for yourself, and then looking at it in the work sense, how are you the same or different than your coworkers is really helpful, because believe it or not, most people don't get up in the morning and say, I'm going to be a jerk today, or I'm going to be difficult, or I want to make that team meeting miserable.
Yes.
People don't wake up with that intention. And sometimes what we might view as bad intentions is really just a lack of understanding of our differences and how we can leverage those differences.
Thank you. I love that you spoke, some people say spoke truth to or whatever, but you called it out that I've never met anyone in my life, and I've met a lot of people in leadership roles that ever woke up and I'm just going to be a jerk face today. Most people don't, they get in those situations. Thank you for calling that out. So this can be, this isn't always as straightforward as it can feel, right? You're dealing with people's suitcases, all of that goes with it. So there's definitely some challenges that I'm sure present. What challenges do leaders often face when trying to leverage an individual team member's unique backgrounds, and how can they navigate those challenges?
I think the biggest challenge is self-awareness from a leadership perspective. I don't know if you have, but I have worked for leaders that had no clue about themselves in terms of how they were coming off to other people, or it kind of floors me sometimes when I see people that are promoted to leadership that really don't have any level of self-awareness and don't really care to get any. So
I've met a few of them as well.
Yeah, I
In my
mean, again, that's not the majority, but there
Right.
are people that lack self-awareness and then lack emotional intelligence, which
Mm.
they're definitely related, but so important. So, and it really has to start with that leader. Um, so I always tell my students when I'm teaching management classes or managers that I'm working with, I'll say, it's not about you, but it's all about you, right? So you
Mm.
got to start with yourself. So if you want to learn about how to develop people, start with yourself. Develop yourself. Who are you as a leader? What are your strengths? What are your caution areas? You know, any strength that's overused really becomes a weakness. So you have to be careful of that. How do I navigate myself? What are my triggers? How does that relate to what experiences I've had in my life? I've had some time to reflect on that. For instance, since my dad was arrested like 50 years ago. So I'm old, right? So um,
You don't look it, Dawn.
I
You don't
came
look
to realize that when someone criticized me, I internalized that. So when someone criticized me at work, I automatically became defensive and just it stressed me out. And I just had these icky feelings. I
Mm.
now know that part of that it goes back to that adverse childhood experience I had as the child of an incarcerated parent, because the minute I told someone that my dad was in prison, then my little first grade friends would say, "Oh, my mom said I can't play with you anymore." So, I mean,
Mm.
just that
Yeah.
that judgment and that stigma, I carried that with me for a long time. I don't carry it with me anymore. I've changed that narrative, but we all carry something, right? And so,
Absolutely.
what is that trigger for you? And knowing what that is and being prepared to handle it when it comes up, because it will come up. We all have those. How are you
Right.
going to navigate yourself? Because if you can't navigate yourself, you can't lead other people.
Yes. I know. And that is sometimes a foreign concept to leaders within a corporation and
Mm-hmm.
any organization. Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right. I'd love to have you share an example of how recognizing and valuing lived experiences has directly led to increased loyalty within a team, right? Because we know that the more loyal a team is, the better results you get as an organization. There's been so much studies that have been done on that. So I would love to have an example of recognizing that and how that has increased loyalty.
I have another slide to share with
Yes,
you
great.
about that, just because I think this visual makes a lot of sense. So I'll share my screen again. That question really brings me back to a team that I worked with a year or two ago,
Mm.
where they had an aha moment. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about that. Um, it was one of the very first workshops I did on team building as I started my consulting business a couple years ago. And that's how I really came to understand and value this concept of talent optimization and trying to help each person bring their best to the workplace, because I saw these kinds of examples happening. So this here is a representation of the world of work. And that's what Predictive Index uses in their talent optimization platform. They split people up into 4 quadrants. And this is very similar to what you'll see with StrengthsFinder or the DISC assessment. They use that the model of competing values in the workplace. And so they're all kind of built on that same model. But this model groups people into, do you tend to work in the world of innovation and agility, results and discipline, process and precision, or teamwork and employee experiences? And you could see this team, the smiley faces are covering up initials because I don't want to give anybody's identity away. Not that any of you
Thank
would
you for
know the
that. We
initials,
appreciate.
but they're all happy people, right? So you can see that this team had a lot of people that were in the top 2 quadrants of the world of work. So mainly living in teamwork and an employee experience and innovation and agility. And then you have this one person down in the bottom two that kind of straddled the line between process and precision and results and discipline. This was a nonprofit organization, and they did a lot of work in the community. And so you can see where that would be valuable in terms of the sense that they had a lot of teamwork and employee experience. They were big collaborators. They understood the value that each person could bring into from a community perspective. They also were innovative and thought outside of the box, and so had new ideas all the time. And then there was this gal down in the bottom who during a team building workshop described herself as the outlier, as the black sheep, the odd man out, were words that she used. She's like, she felt bad. She's like, I'm the weird one, and I'm not like everyone else. And she says, I feel like I'm annoying people. She happened to be a finance person and had a finance and operations background, accounting and that things of that nature. And she said, I'm the one who's always saying, we need a process for this. And everybody else was kind of like, oh, whatever.
Process lady.
Yeah. And so, but we were able to reframe that. We flipped that, because actually what she was a balancer to the team. And actually, this was a team that actually needed more structure and needed some processes and systems. And this was their way on their kind of path to discovering that for themselves, right? Like they went, oh, aha, you know what? This makes sense why this person keeps saying we need a process, we need a system, and nobody else seems to find the urgency in that because they don't think like she does.
Yeah.
So I reframed it I said, no, this team needs you. And the team said, yes, we need you, because we do need processes. We do recognize the chaos that is here because we don't have processes and systems. Can you help us with that? So that was a reframing for her. That was a reframing for her team. And that was the core of who she was. She was all about processes, systems, disciplines, formalities. And that team really needed that. And so variety, you need variety on a team. You don't want to all be the same. You're just not gonna, there's not the richness there that you have if you have people that come from all different points of view and all different styles of working.
Right. Yeah, I love the idea of that. Just the richness of an environment and that loyalty, right, builds, because what you start to see is there's a loyalty to one. You understand it's not a judgment. It's not a getting in the way. And it's not you changing expectations as much as you're really opening up this behind the scenes. This is what it is. And how do we leverage this? How do we use this team to continue to further this organizational's goals, right? Which every organization should have. This is our goals, right? Should be attaining them. I love that. Can you imagine having that organization and she wasn't there at all?
Yeah, it would have been
how long would
crazy. Yeah. So I think she had a new appreciation for what she could bring to the team, and the team had a new appreciation for that too. Not that they didn't value her before, because they just valued people, and so that was great. But she just looked at it differently, and so did they. And that kind of spearheaded some work that I did with them, and some things they did internally to start building the systems that they needed. And so it's kind of like leading them on the path of self-discovery, because they figure it out on their own just by looking at this map. They're like, well, that looks a little unbalanced. And that's interesting. It's just a really great conversation starter.
Yeah, I love that. And I love too that individual walked away with probably more confidence than they had before. And that's never a bad thing when somebody feels more as part of a team. That's
exactly.
Great.
Yeah.
What a great
positive
example.
Experience there.
All right. Leaders, HR leaders. Some businesses have HR leaders, some do not. So you have your ops, whoever, there's somebody in there, right, that's focusing on that. But how can HR and other leaders ensure that the rich tapestry of their employees' backgrounds are being adequately recognized and celebrated, especially in the hiring and onboarding process, which is interesting
Wow.
that people are bring them
Yeah,
on.
that's a really, really great question. And it kind of goes back to philosophically what I believe in, that is that HR needs to be a strategic partner with an organization. And so let's all get on the same page, and let's, obviously recruitment and retention is a priority for every organization, if not, for most, if not all. In today's world where top talent's hard to find and you want to keep your high performers. So how do we position HR to be that strategic partner? Well, let's do some strategic planning together and figure out together how we're going to do this, because it all starts with HR. The first exposure that a person has to an organization is through HR. So that whole process of engaging and connecting and building relationships needs to start the minute someone decides they want to apply for a job in your company, or if you're out recruiting. So, and I don't necessarily know what all the answers are, but if HR folks are in the mindset of recognizing the human experience at work, that will help lead conceptually how we do this. It's a culture shift. We're in a human revolution right now, right? So we've had a technological revolution. We had an industrial revolution in this country. Well, now we're in a human revolution. And so human resources has to put the human back into their work. And I know the folks listening to this broadcast are the people that are doing a lot of the stuff already. And so thank you. How do you bring along the people that haven't quite caught that message yet? I teach new managers how to be leaders, and it's astounding the number of people who ask me a question and I say, well, what is your HR department? How can they support you? And they say, we don't have an HR department, or the only HR function we have is payroll. And that person doesn't want to help me with conflict resolution.
No way. I am payroll only. Don't ask me to solve your problems.
Right. So it comes down to creating that culture of recognizing the human experience and supporting the human experience at work. And it starts there with HR, and also then equipping your leaders to be good people leaders. The other thing that absolutely floors me, although is not totally surprising, is the number of people who are promoted to leadership because they're good at their jobs as individual contributors. They have no clue what they got themselves into. They're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know I had to be a social worker. I didn't sign up for this. And so, and they also get a raw deal because there's usually no one there to help them. And so that's the person that signs up for my class and says, please help me. I don't even know if I want to do this. I thought I was going to like this, and I had no clue what the shift was. And so you have to prepare people to be people leaders and set the culture to be recognizing the value of that human experience, and how do we get the best out of each person that walks in our door.
Yeah, it's interesting to watch individuals shift from they're operationally sound or they're the best to all of a sudden they're coming into grips with some of their own stuff, because I'm not a social worker. Are you kidding me? I didn't get my degree in social work, but that's a really good, clear identification of really what's happening. And I remember leaving an organization once I left, and I had one of my managers stop me and they said, oh my gosh, Elena, I had no idea you were a counselor. And what are you talking about? And she said, my door has been revolving since you have left, having conversations, human conversations with people. And that actually deters a lot of potential phenomenal leaders, is that fear that all of a sudden they walk into, I don't know what I'm doing. So
yeah, the other thing is, and PS, I don't like conflict. I'm a conflict avoider. First of all, there's ways you can mitigate it, prevent conflict in the first place. How do you do that? But then once it's there, or if it is there, what do you do about it? You can't just ignore it, because it will blow up in your face.
Every time.
I think the other thing is this, right? Like, and this is from my perspective, if you don't absolutely love people and love the idea of helping people be their best, maybe don't be a manager.
Agreed.
Right? I mean,
oh yeah.
For me, it comes from that, and I hear that in the words you say too, is, I love working with people. I love helping people to be their best. That's what gets me out of the bed every morning, right. That really resonates with me. If that sounds really icky to you, maybe don't take the promotion.
Don't apply for the job, people. Don't apply for it.
Or explore that and figure out, if you are going to be a manager, how do you work through that to learn and grow, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, love that. All right, small business. So we have a lot of potential. We have small business owners on here, small business leaders, small businesses. I hear a lot say, I can't afford a full-time HR person, or I don't have a ton of money in the bank, or whatever. But given the limited resources of small businesses compared to larger corporations, what strategies would you suggest they adopt to harness the power of diverse lived experiences?
Yeah, you know what? This is one of those topics where I'd say advantage goes to small businesses, right?
Agreed.
And you could talk about alignment within an organization, or I like to use the terminology line of sight. Can that individual contributor, can that employee see what you're trying to accomplish as an organization and as a team? It's a lot easier to do that in a small organization versus an organization with many levels of hierarchy.
Yes.
You can have many units, divisions, groups, teams, and everything just gets harder and harder to see the further you are away from it. So that small business has the advantage in that line of sight is easier. I also think that small businesses tend to be more family-like. You get to know folks better because there's fewer people. I sure have worked in a lot of organizations where my coworkers felt like my family. And that's easier to do in a small organization than in a really large organization. So even though you have less resources, I think the resources you have are more powerful. And the environment is more powerful in the sense of, okay, we're going to prioritize keeping our good people. You say it out loud, and you say it to everyone, and you say it to your leadership team. How are we going to do that? And let's all get on the same page. Make sure everybody, it's easier to get on the same page, create a plan, and implement the plan, and then continuous improvement. I say plan, do, study, act. Okay, what's your priority? What are you going to do? Do it. How'd it go? How are you going to tweak it? It's a lot easier to do all of that in a small organization.
Yeah.
So advantage small business.
Yeah, I agree. I think they have a lot of advantages. I worked in corporate, and unless that manager of that smaller unit could convey that and be that, it was a struggle for a lot of individuals I saw in my experience. So thank you. Organizational advantages. How can an organization utilize these skills to attract and retain top talent, right? Because you're talking about this human revolution, everybody's scrambling for talent. How does that help get top talent in our organization?
Yeah, I think we have to flip things on its side a little bit. And what I call all of this strengths-based performance development, right? Okay, so it's an asset-based approach. And it really comes from my experience as a public health leader. We talked about an asset-based approach to building healthy communities, for example. So instead of focusing on what was wrong, we focused on the talents and the innate abilities in the community that could help them move forward. And that being the real focus instead of focusing on weaknesses, for example. So it's that asset-based approach. And I say strengths-based performance development. And from an HR perspective, a lot of times we use the word performance management, but it really isn't about that. It's about developing people, not managing people, right? So let's shift away from this management terminology. Like we need to go out and tell people what to do and boss them around. No,
Right.
what you need to do is develop them so that they can be working at their fullest potential. So there's a lot of ways to do that. Again, start with yourself. Who am I as a leader? And then who's on my team? How do I get to know them? And what drives their behavior at work? What really jazzes them up? Why do they come to work every day? One of the freebies I have at the end of the presentation today is what is it called? It's a talent optimization supporting principles handout. It's actually about 7 pages long. But so I've been studying strengths-based performance for probably 20 years, you know, starting with the Gallup organization and the First Break All the Rules and StrengthsFinder and all of that. And now I've moved to this talent optimization model, which I describe as StrengthsFinder on steroids, because it looks at individual innate talents, what that means for the team dynamic, and then also how that matches the strategy that you're trying to pursue so that you can kind of fill your gaps. But anyway, I've taken all of this and boiled it down into this strengths-based performance development document that is the freebie from New Dawn Consulting. And so there's a lot of concepts in there about how do you have a strengths conversation with a person, and how do you really actually do this? And so it's about how do you develop people to bring their best, because you know what? That's what they want to do. You just have to create the environment in which that can happen. Everybody wants to make a difference, a positive difference. Right.
I love it. And one of the things that I noticed too is you talk about really creating and understanding your team, and recruiting really is, there's a couple, right? You can go out and find and identify and bring people in, but I work with a few clients right now that we're talking about, we want to be the best place to work so that we don't have to go looking. The best talent
finds
is attracted to us and finds us. And that's where I think small businesses, especially with everything that happened with COVID, these smaller organizations that, what was it? It was the, everybody was quitting. It was I can't even think.
The Great Resignation.
Thank you. It was a great resignation where people were, I don't have to do this anymore. And they found these organizations. And that's where I would say, like, retaining top talent and attracting top talent is be the best place to work.
And you know the number one driver of employee engagement, right? Like if you look at the Q12, that Gallup survey, the number one driver of engagement is my manager cares about me as a person.
Yes. And it's been that way for years. I don't think that's ever moved off the top spot very well.
We're starting to figure that out now though. And I mean, the world in general says, yeah, that makes sense. Whereas 5 or 10 years ago, they'd go, oh, well, that's nice. And that's all that touchy-feely stuff. And people are understanding that that really does matter. And they're seeing it play out in real life, because if you don't care about your people, they will leave you.
Right.
Because they'll find someone who does care about them. It's that simple.
Yeah.
It really is.
Oh, I love that. It is interesting to me that it's been on there and to your point, we're in this human revolution where we're trying to figure out, what does that actually look like? We're actually asking the questions. What does that really look like? And it's not always the woo-woo, right? Like I was listening to something today and they said there's human and emotion, and you can have a human connection with somebody and not a ton of like some people think if I'm crying all the time and there's all these emotions, and that's really.
Yeah, let me clarify that too. Yeah, because it's not about having group therapy sessions at work.
Nope.
No, it's just about having a human connection with people and letting them share as much as they want to share. Some people don't want to share a lot about anything, and that's okay. But you can have a strengths conversation with anyone, and you can say, hey, what gets you up in the morning to come to work? What's your favorite part of this job? Why do you stay? What's the part you hate?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we can engineer a way that you don't have to do that as often. Sometimes you have to do things you don't like because it's just how it is. But if you have a real deliberate conversation about what energizes a person and what kind of sucks them dry,
Right.
you can come up with strategies that make that workday that much better for that person. And it can make a big difference.
And again, it goes back to that focus of positive, like it's this positive focus of things that are working well, not what's going wrong and how do we fix everything. It's really what's going well and how do we leverage that. I love that mentality because that positivity makes a huge difference in work.
Yeah. The other thing I think with that human experience at work is what I really want to help people understand is there's a way to have a trauma-informed approach in the workplace.
Right.
And that people are starting to figure that out too. And so that's a change in the narrative too. So when people are emotional or stressed or triggered, instead of saying or thinking to yourself, what's wrong with you? The question you say to yourself is, what happened to you? Right? So it's that experience thing. It's like people act out and they get triggered because they're feeling something. It's not because they're a bad person, but we've all had things that have happened to us that trigger strong feelings.
Yes.
So we have to understand that better. And I advocate for this a lot in schools, a trauma-informed approach in schools, because that's where that really plays in. Instead of saying, what's wrong with you, kid? It's what happened to you. And I've worked with an amazing elementary school principal who, when a child is acting out in the classroom, he asks them what they need. Instead of saying, what's wrong with you? He's going, I know something happened, right? What's happened to this kid? So he'll say, what do you need? So sometimes when we want to say, what's wrong with you? How about asking, what do you need?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
great
flipping the narrative.
Shifting the narrative, just changing the question, the way you ask, changing your response, right? And that I have seen complete shifts in individuals. And we have another presentation specifically on trauma informed in the workplace because that's the heart. But yes, we as leaders, we as HR get to change how we arrive and how we approach a situation. We can't always change how the person is showing up. We can't, but we can always change how that's what we have control over. People is
your own behavior.
Your own behavior.
And the messages you're telling yourself in your head.
Absolutely.
So you should not believe everything you think.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Did you guys hear that? Don't believe everything you think.
And I'll throw in, because I tell this to my husband all the time, you don't have to say everything that pops into your head, nor should you.
Nor should you. You don't have to, nor should you. I'm giving you permission to not do that.
Exactly.
Oh, so and it's okay to have those conversations. I actually had a few of those conversations with some of my leaders. You said what? Okay, let's talk through.
And what was the message in your brain at that time? Because you can't always believe everything you think.
Right. And it doesn't always come out the way you think it's going to come out, by the way. If you got to be really aware of that connection, which
so that's a whole nother conversation about how to retrain your thinking, retrain your brain. And I have some really good stories about that and how I've done that for myself. And if I can do it, anybody can. So
yes. So if you guys haven't yet, go check out New Dawn. Check her website. She's got some great stuff. Plus she'll have some great freebies. Dawn, futuristic. I'm always about what's not the next thing, but this visionary, like how can this impact and what is this going to look like? So as we look towards the future of work's not going away. It's going to always be there. How do you envision the role of lived experiences continuing to shape team dynamics and resilience, team resilience?
Yeah, I don't think I know the answer to that. I would like to share one more graphic. Is that all right?
Yeah, please. Yeah, absolutely.
Let me find it here. Okay, so I think the future is full of power. When you think about human potential, there really are no limits. And that's what's beautiful about that human experience at work, is because if we start paying attention to that, the heads, the hearts, the briefcases, and the experiences, and leveraging all that uniqueness, the sky is really the limit. There is no limit to the human potential that's there.
Yes.
The other thing that comes to mind when you ask that question is this other graphic is, I think it's going to be mind-blowing. I think we have no idea. There are going to be things that emerge from this human revolution and from the organizations that lean into that. It's going to blow our minds. And I'm excited to see what happens.
I am too. I love that thought of what it's going to be and where it's going to go. And I would just tell everybody here that's listening, you guys, this can be a game changer for you, for your organization, be a part of it, help develop it. Dawn, I would love any last parting words to everybody who's in the audience about.
Thank you for your attention to all of this. And I would like to sum it up in 3 points. So I have three. These are the Dawn Beck principles of leadership. It's 3 simple things, right? And nothing is this simple, but if you're going to boil it down, don't be a jerk. Number 1. Number 2, all you need is love. And number 3, let it be, right? So, check yourself, make sure you're not the problem. Love your people. And I don't mean sing kumbaya and hold hands and have therapy. What I mean is care about them as people. They will give you 110% plus.
Yes.
And then just let it be. Give them what they need to do their jobs well and get out of the way.
Yes.
Yep.
Love that.
That would be my parting thought.
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you again for coming. Thank you for participating. And what a great opportunity for everybody in the audience to just gain some wisdom around this. And this is game changer. If you're a small business owner, if you're HR, it really is a game changer. I can tell you, I was in leadership positions for over 25 years, and this was something that we did. When you can connect to that individual as a human, they will do more for you than you can even possibly imagine. In fact, that's where you'll watch people move and leave different organizations to go work for a leader. And that's the leader, and that's the person that connects. So thank you for sharing this great wisdom. Dawn has some great things. You have the assessment, right? The assessment that
oh yeah,
motivating needs.
Yep.
That drive their workplace. Yeah, go ahead. You're probably going to say it way better than I would on the freebies.
Yeah, so that world of work map where I showed the 4 quadrants,
yes.
If anyone's interested in knowing where they land in the world of work, I'm offering a link to take the predictive index behavioral assessment. So you'll get a reference profile and it'll give you some information about your strongest behaviors and how that might show up at work. And then I also have that strengths finding development guide, how to have strengths conversations and develop strengths in people. That's going to be available. Also, before I sign off here in the chat, I will put the slides for this presentation so people have them if they want them.
Great.
Okay.
All right, Dawn, thank you so much. Everybody, thank you for coming. Dawn, such a pleasure to have you here today. And again, if you guys haven't yet, go check her out. She's on LinkedIn and other social media platforms, but check out her site as well and just absorb what you can from her. Thank you, guys.
Thanks. It's been awesome.